Hello!
Welcome back
to Sustainability in the Sea.
We're both back this time.
Yay. Sorry we missed an episode there. It's been kind of an intense summer.
It has.
So yeah, I just finished Kuleana Coral's COAST program. It stands for Coral Occupational Applications and Scientific Techniques.
So what does that mean?
It's basically like a coral restoration training program for students, and it's just so intense, and it's every summer, and this is our second summer, and so
it's super cool. They get dive trained, they get coral survey training, they get job and applicable skills.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of guest speakers, but it's really intense, and so some of this stuff, like the podcast, kind of took a backseat. So sorry about that.
Yeah, but those we'll call them kiddos, just graduated, and now we're back.
Now we're back, and I've actually talked about the program a lot on my Instagram if you want to learn more about it, and my LinkedIn at Carissa and Climate. It's really cool, and I hope that more organizations build programs, and I hope that you guys listening join workforce programs like this, because you don't need to go to get a 4-year degree to learn how to save the reef. You just need the skills. So right now, and frankly, I would say that the 4-year degree, we don't have time to wait in that regard, and so
skills are more valuable anyway.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about today. So
no,
I just wanted to tell you guys that, and thank you to everybody who supported our merch. Everything got to them this week. It
nice.
It shipped out, and so
have they been posting?
Yeah, I got some photos,
nice.
And I haven't had a chance to reshare yet.
All right, we'll share on our story, on FutureSwell story.
Oh my gosh, and that's actually open. It's in the link. I'll put it in the show notes if you do want to get the merch, and it wasn't available to you, and you didn't send it then. You should definitely send it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about this week?
Today we are talking about deep sea mining. I've been wanting to do an episode on this for so long.
Mm-hmm. It's been at the forefront of conservation for a little while.
The forefront? Really?
Not for the last year, I would say.
Maybe just in our world. The idea is... Oh, Riley.
Hey, stop.
The idea is that I just want you guys to have to listen to one episode to learn everything you need to know about the deep sea mining debate, so you can come to this episode not knowing anything and leave up to speed on what's going on and kind of empowered to take action. So that's what this episode is going to be about. We're going to try to not make it too long, and Alex doesn't know much about what's been going on this summer with all the nuance, and so
there's a ton of nuance, so it's constantly changing as well. So we're going to get you up to speed.
Don't scare them.
But we're going to get you up to speed in this quick episode. I say quick, we'll see how it goes.
All right, welcome back to Sustainability in the Sea. Okay, what is deep sea mining?
Deep sea mining is where they are pulling polymetallic nodules, which are like these little clumps of rare metals, earth, rock, essentially, from the deep sea.
Those polymetallic nodules, they kind of look like
little rocks, I think. Or big
I had
rocks,
someone
basketball-shaped rocks.
Be like, they're like little turds.
They kind of look like little turds.
They do kind of look like little turds.
And so these metals are used for things like battery systems.
But the thing is you guys are ocean climate girlies. I know you care about these things, but the battery innovation has been so rapid as our clean energy has scaled that there are batteries that are running that don't even require these metals. So the battery, the way batteries are changing is so rapid. The other part that you need to know about this is that our world leaders really want to say that clean energy is going to stop the climate crisis, and it's not. It'll reduce our emissions, but we have to do so many other things. We have to stop consumerism. We have to invest in nature-based solutions. We have to give land back to indigenous peoples to steward it. There are all these other things. We can't save it with batteries.
Yeah, they like to say that it's this is a one-step solution, and that's just not the case.
And that's really important for you to understand before we talk about deep sea mining, because that's the crux of the argument that's being made to decision makers. We have to mine the deep sea because you need batteries for your solar panels, and your batteries need these metals. The batteries don't need the metals, and our battery demand can be met without all of these metals. And I just feel is that a good background to start on?
Sure. I'm excited to learn what do non-metal batteries need.
Well, you can see it with
Like hydrogen.
Or like it's like turbines, right? And like the main thing that the metals are used for is for battery storage.
Energy storage.
Yeah. And so what people have said, and like obviously land-based mining is not a great industry, but there are at least regulations in place.
Mm-hmm.
There's not regulations in place in the ocean. There's none at all right now. So the deep sea mining debate positions environmentalists against each other inherently to profit whatever corporation is going to lead the deep sea mining industry. For you listeners, that corporation, there is one. It is called the Metals Company. The Metals Company is very powerful. They are lobbying decision makers around the world. They've convinced a few island nations that deep sea mining will save them. They are in Congress lobbying elected officials in the U.S., telling them this is how we're going to meet our clean energy demands. And they're positioning it like we will save the planet if we can mine the deep sea. Now, I am not a clean energy expert, but we are marine biologists. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to say that a climate advocate like who cares about renewable energy understands the ocean, because the ocean and climate have been so separated in the conversation.
They're so interlinked, but they're not put together in the real world.
Yeah, I was at the World Wildlife Fund lobby day, and I was talking to environmentalists about deep sea mining. He was like, "Well, how are we gonna do it?" And I was like, "Can I just talk to you for a few minutes? Like, you just need to know."
And I think the most important thing is the damage that the mining actually is doing.
Yeah,
the unknown of what the mining does to it.
So the seafloor, the deep sea, is where life began evolutionarily, and for indigenous people in the Pacific, it's where life began culturally. Native Hawaiians believe that life began with the coral polyp in the deep sea, the deep ocean, and that's just one community that we obviously live here, so we're aware of, but Pacific communities across Pacifica have different ties to the deep sea. And currently right now negotiations are going on in Jamaica, which we'll get into, and a Native Hawaiian leader, Uncle Sol, is advocating for there to be like a board of indigenous leaders to provide input on mining regulations so that leaders can at least hear from indigenous community representatives of how this industry is going to impact them. So that's huge and very important.
That seems like the very least.
I know, bare minimum. So ecologically though, the deep sea is where like carbon is stored. So the ocean is our largest carbon sink, but like when carbon gets absorbed by the ocean, it gets exported, for lack of a better term, to the deep sea through the biological pump. It's like...
Yeah, so what that means is things like plankton, things like fish that die,
whales.
Whales is a big example, but they sink to the bottom of the seafloor, and there they don't really disintegrate, or they don't decompose like for long periods of time because there's so little.
They take a while, yeah.
Yeah, there's so little movement, there's so little going on down there, and so like everything that falls down through the seafloor over time is that carbon that sinks.
And what they're finding is, maybe when we were going through school, we thought there was so little going on down there, but there's actually so much life that relies on those things like whale falls, and so there's those that say that whale falling to the seafloor can sustain food for deep sea organisms for so long.
Wow.
And so there's all of this life down there. Life moves slow. Time moves slow in the deep sea. Everything is so long lived. We're talking about these things live thousands of years. And the sediment from the whale falls is where all the carbon gets stored. So if you take essentially a lawnmower, you guys, these are giant machines. Huge machines. What they do, they're like almost like rovers, like lawnmower rovers.
Like vacuums almost.
Yeah, they vacuum up the sediment. They collect the polymetallic nodules. Then they spit out everything that isn't the polymetallic nodules. And they do this across the entire seafloor. So what does that do? It destroys the entire seabed. The entire seabed.
And even so, say...
Everything that lives down there. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree. But say like you're like a lawnmower and you're going like in this one path. But then what it also does is it kicks up and spits out all of like essentially the dust and the sediment. And so this dust and sediment
plumes,
is going to rain down on anything else. And so it's just going to be covering this other ecosystem that could be over here. It may not have gotten directly run over by this giant rover, but it's just going to be buried.
So it's essentially like you've got the active disruption and devastation from the rover. Then you have the plume disruption. I'm not even going to make the case. I'm not even going to spend time on this episode talking about how devastating that is. If you guys are interested in the ocean, if you're studying the ocean, you can understand the ecological scale of which the devastation is. And by the way, most carbon and methane is stored in that sediment. So they're like not just like the loss of deep sea life, which, you know, inherently not everyone cares about the way that, you know, maybe we do. But the disruption of the sediment will release like thousands of tons of methane. So then the ocean has the potential. We don't know the full effects of it.
That's the scariest part.
That's the scariest part. We don't know. So then you're like, wait, the ocean's been the carbon sink, the deep sea's been the carbon sink, and they're like, well, if you release all this methane, it's going to what? Acidify the oceans faster. It's going to prevent the ocean from the carbon sink capabilities to the full potential that it was if it was healthy, if it was undisrupted. Like, it's absolute chaos. It's bringing chaos there, destroying the ecosystem, and then saying out of sight, out of mind, that doesn't affect us. We are lying to ourselves if we think that's not going to affect us. I just feel like the ocean is such an, you know how you're like, oh, you throw your clothes away, where does away go? And then it like ends up literally in a small country in the Pacific, and it's like polluting them.
Piles and mountains.
What does away look like when you think of the deep ocean? I know that it can be hard to conceptualize. I know it can be hard to get people to care about the deep sea, but this is going to cause intense consequences to a scale we've never seen as far as devastation.
Yeah, and yeah, like I said, the thing we don't know is the unknown. It's like we don't know how it's going to affect us, but I would put a lot of money that it's not going to be in a positive way.
Right. So that is the debate. People are like, we need deep sea mining to meet our battery demands, and then everyone who understands the importance of the ocean and the climate discussion is like, wait. We're talking about hundreds of scientists. We're talking about 27 countries. We'll get into that. So now you guys know part one, the argument. Okay. Part two, the landscape. This is where we are at now. Did you hear Riley sigh? So we have a number. Right now, the International Seabed Authority is determining the fate of the deep sea mining industry. So we have character number one, the metals company. They're lobbying all over the world. We have the International Seabed Authority. That's where all of the countries who have ratified the unification of the Convention of the Law of the Sea. The U.S. hasn't. We never ratified that at any president. That's why we're not at the ISA. We don't have delegations at the ISA. You don't need to worry about that jargon right now. The main thing is that everyone who has ratified the Convention on the Law of the Sea is at the ISA negotiations. They meet biannually, annually, and every single time they're making like global decisions. So this is a global discussion. This summer, because of, I'm not going to go into it, because a Pacific region, Nauru, kicked off essentially a timer, we are now this July in a decision where the ISA has to determine what if they will proceed with the deep sea mining contract or if they will stop. So that we are at the crux right now this July. Right now, actually, as this is being filmed, they're in Jamaica. The world leaders are in Jamaica. Okay, so where are we at and who cares about what? We have Pacific islands like Fiji, like Palau, leading the charge against deep sea mining for cultural ties, precautionary ties, as representations from indigenous people, and saying, please do not harm literally our family. You have a country like France, who is one of the only countries who has signed an outright ban on deep sea mining. They say never, even if the world goes forward with it, we're never going to do it.
That's awesome.
So awesome. And then you have countries that have signed on to different levels. One has signed on to a moratorium, which said, we're not going to do anything for at least 10 years. There's too much that we need to know.
Like a pause.
And then there's ones that have caused a precautionary pause, which is where they have not committed to the 10 years. But they're saying, we're not going to do anything for now.
For now.
And then you have some that have committed to bans. Where do they want to mine?
So it's this area called the Clarion, how do I say it?
Clarion-Clipperton Zone.
Yes, there it is.
It's in the Pacific. It's not just the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. That's just where a hotspot is. It would just be very efficient for their expensive rovers to collect all the nodules. There are a lot of areas around the Pacific. I'm not as familiar as areas in the Atlantic, but I'm sure they're there, that are targets right now. Huge targets. And these are areas, like, let me just do an aside. These areas are so important to communities that rely on it for navigation, like Polynesians who travel across the Pacific. These areas are important for ancestral reasons, for indigenous peoples, as I mentioned, and they're also so important for biodiversity for the ocean. If we don't have an intact biological pump functioning in the ocean, not only are we not getting the benefits of a carbon sink, we're not getting the benefits across the entire marine food chain that not only provides 3 billion people on the planet with food, but like all of the other benefits that biodiversity provides us. Like, okay, deep sea mining is bad. We don't need to talk about that part of it anymore. So you have these countries that there's some that are undecided, whatever. And then you have corporations. So you have corporations like Volvo who have said, we're not gonna make cars with batteries that were mined from the deep sea, because obviously there's electrification of car fleets.
Have to be reporting of where their minerals come from?
They've committed to doing that. There's a lot of corporations that have voluntarily signed on. So there's these things called coalitions, where there are, companies that are coalitions against deep sea mining, countries that are announcing their pauses and bans, leaders, and then advocates. So this is the most important part of the episode. There are 4 or 5 players for the purposes of you guys as our listeners that you guys should follow for ways to help and stop against deep sea mining. Because this is a global conversation and because we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to stop this industry before it starts.
That's key.
It's huge. You have no matter where you are and no matter how old you are, you have a lot of power in what you choose to do. So there's the Deep Sea Conserve Coalition. They are working at the large scale building coalitions against deep sea mining. They have a business one. So on the Deep Sea Conservation Coalition website, that's where you'll be able to see all the corporations that have said we're not going to use minerals that are mined from the deep sea. Mm-hmm. But on social media, which I know is where a lot of us live and get a lot of our information, there are 3 main players that FutureSwell has been amplifying and partnered with for social media campaigns and communications to you guys for the last year. There's Sustainable Ocean Alliance, who got me to our ocean in Greece this year. They are around the world. They are stopping deep sea mining through youth mobilization and organizing. These organizations are so organized. SOA is so organized. In the U.S., there's currently a campaign for us to tell all of our, because there's a debate in Congress about whether we should go forward. And there's by the way, Hillary Clinton was we should do mining. I was what are you doing? Jeez. So essentially congressional members they don't know enough. The metals company's been lobbying in their offices. We just need to be vocal and they need to make it clear, this is a non-negotiable. Yeah, I know it's a non-negotiable, right? And so Sustainable Ocean Alliance has the toolkits that you need in their bio to take action.
Nice.
Day-to-day updates, the Oxygen Project, Look Down Action, and us with FutureSwell are partnering to get information from on-the-ground negotiations at the ISA and the global deep sea mining timeline and landscape and environment out on social media. So if you're following us 3 and you're subscribed to Sustainable Ocean Alliance's newsletter, or you're on their bio at their toolkits, you're going to be getting these updates. So you just need to listen to this episode to get up to speed of where we're at on deep sea mining, and then you need to follow those people so that you can understand actions that are taking place, because they are organizing globally, youth activism organizing at a level that we shouldn't try to do it ourselves. We just need to work with them.
Yeah, or gotta work together, obviously.
Yes. That's how you could take action. So, the drama of this ISA negotiation. We've had like 5 or 6 countries come out against deep sea mining in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
I was at our ocean, and the president of Palau, President Whips, he's such a spokesperson against deep sea mining. He called on all people, on all regions, on all countries to take a precautionary pause. But at the ISA negotiations right now, we have Uncle Sol and other Indigenous leaders advocating for the Indigenous Input Board. We have Nauru, who kicked off the timer for them to decide whether they're going to get a mining contract.
Mm-hmm.
We have no mining code in place, no regulations.
Do they want mining or not in their waters?
Yes.
That's why they kicked off the timer.
The metals company is working with Nauru. So Nauru's mining contracts is through the metals company, and telling them you're going to get all your problems will be solved if you mine.
Yeah.
Now, in the U.S., Hawaii just banned deep sea mining in state waters this legislative session. Nice. They're joining a few other states in the U.S., California, Washington, who did the same. But it is a victory, and it's something we should celebrate, and it's something we were really involved in. Mm-hmm. But it's very unlikely that mining would ever take place in the economic exclusion zone, the actual Hawaii state waters. Like, it's going to be happening in the Clipperton zone. The real thing would be if we said, none of you guys can use our ports for mining. That would be, like, the next step. Okay, so that's just an aside. Like, it's a victory, but there's a lot more that's going on. It's a tiny step. So it may have been why it only took a couple years to pass.
Yeah.
So at the ISA right now, there are 2 things going on. One thing is that a groundbreaking study was just released while they're all collected in Jamaica negotiating and talking about this, that found that the polymetallic nodules release oxygen.
Whoa.
Yeah. Did you see that?
I did. I saw it pretty recently.
So now we're at the point. So the ocean is already providing every other breath of air that we take. Mm-hmm. We need through clean plankton. Air. Well, no, they thought it was just through plankton.
So now it's also through these deep sea environments, ecosystems.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like, the level of groundbreaking new knowledge is, like, it's like, not just do these nodules matter. The deep sea is a huge part of the reason we have oxygen.
Wow.
We've been learning our whole life that was from plankton. Mm-hmm. Only.
Mm-hmm. Plankton and trees.
Plankton and trees. And the deep sea.
Yeah.
So that got released right when they all arrived in Jamaica. Now, Uncle Sol and Uncle Ikolu did some videos with Sustainable Ocean Alliance talking about it. They're calling it dark oxygen because, not them, like the world is calling it dark oxygen. And because it's from the deep dark ocean. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely worthwhile and worth checking out. But the thing is the study was partially funded by the metals company.
Love when that happens.
And they were so blindsided by the results and the release of it, and it obviously doesn't serve their interests. Mm-hmm. So now they're like scrambling to discredit it.
Oh.
So now they're on the defense, right? They're like, wait, the study isn't legit. And then everyone is all together in Jamaica like, what do you mean? Like, we know the scientists. Like, there's a huge science activation on here. Like, Dr. Diva Amon is just one, but there's like so many scientists engaged on the deep sea mining front. And the deep sea mining debate ended up on Late Night with John Oliver this summer. It's been covered in the New York Times a bunch. It's really just like entering the mainstream, which is another reason that I kind of like lit a fire under our butts to make this episode.
Yeah, you gotta speak up.
Like people just need to understand the nuance of it, and you're never gonna get that.
You gotta keep the momentum going. It's like we start talking about it. We don't want it to be in the 2-week news cycle. We want it to be forever. At the forefront of conservation, so we can just shut it down and then not have to think about this. Ideally.
Action Toolkits, Sustainable Ocean Alliance, Instagram bio. That's all you need to know. That's like what I'll put. Yeah, all toolkits are there. So that study got released. Now the metals company's trying to discredit it.
I'm the classic shell move.
I know. They're just like, tale as old as time with the climate crisis.
It is. And
then currently at the ISA negotiations, there's also an election taking place. Did you know about this?
No.
Okay, gotta get my info up. So there is an election taking place of who the leadership of the International Seabed is going to be.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Who gets to vote?
Participating nations.
Okay.
Which is not the U.S., unfortunately.
Dang. So if you are a participating nation, figure out how to vote.
Yeah. So they're trying to finalize the mining regulations, which I already shared.
Mm-hmm.
But the two people are, there's this one guy who, where's his name? Okay. It's the Secretary General position, which is the highest leadership position for the ISA.
Okay.
So his name's Michael Lodge. So Michael Lodge, this would be his third term, and he is very open that he is trying to accelerate industrial scale deep sea mining.
Oh.
He is having meetings with the CEO of the metals company all the time. He has never declined a deep sea exploration license. He's never declined any license for the deep sea, because that's how it works, is you have to apply for a license to mine an area. So like Nauru applied for the license. That was like one of the kickoffs. They applied for a mining license. So then there was a timer for the ISA to figure it out in 2 years. That was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So he's never declined a single one.
Wow. So right now it's a lot of exploration, and once they get
it's only been exploration up until this point.
But if they say go ahead,
if they grant the license to
it
Nauru,
will be full scale
mining.
extraction. Yeah.
Yeah. So
who's our other option?
So that's Michael. Michael will 100% put a nail in the coffin to the deep sea. He will grant whatever deep sea mining license goes across his desk. He will single-handedly be responsible in partnership with the metals company for destroying the deep ocean. Okay. This election is happening this week, you guys. The tea is so real. Then we have Leticia Carvalho from Brazil.
Do we like her?
We love her.
Yeah, we do. We love her.
But the U.S. isn't voting. So we can just tell you guys that she's great.
So if you're from Brazil or Chile or who else?
Yeah, South America. Yeah, Daniel from SOA is mobilizing strongly.
Nice.
So, and for those of you that don't know, there's this thing, it's called the precautionary pause. Sylvia Earle talks about it all the time. The precautionary pause is basically to just err on the side of caution when it comes to ocean conservation, is what she talks about it. But you could say this for anything. Mm-hmm. So, Leticia really advocates for a precautionary pause. She says things like, I just want to show this. Look at this photo. Look at this photo that the Ocean Project made. Look at this, you guys. It's got like the oyster. So she says things like, maybe we wait until we know more.
Totally reasonable.
She says,
we don't know enough.
She says things like, even though we can't know everything about the deep sea, why don't we at least develop some regulations before we start the industry?
Great idea.
She says things like, regulations are important.
They are.
Okay. She's also an oceanographer.
Ah, that's good.
From the Global South.
Nice.
A Latina. Down. And her stance is no deep sea mining application should be approved until the process of developing regulations is complete.
Makes total sense.
You guys, who's going to vote for her? Is your country voting for her?
Everyone raise your hand.
We can't. We aren't allowed to vote.
Everyone else raise your hands.
But he's already this is his third term. And
you gotta put term limits on these things too.
God, I know we turn limits all day. So that's essentially all of the tea. We will report back. You need all updates from us by following our Instagram.
Yeah, follow the Instagram. We collab post with.
They do all the work. We just amplify to all of you guys, so you should really follow them. But they are sharing the nuance of the day to day. I'm also in a WhatsApp. Here, I'll actually just report this. I am in an internal WhatsApp of the ISA negotiations.
You get some summaries.
Yeah.
Insider info.
Insider information. Today, President of Palau is standing firm against the exploitation of ocean resources. Of course, you guys, President Whips is the best. He advocated for transforming the ISA to an entity that protects and preserves the marine environment.
Yes.
Let's not leave Jamaica having granted the mining industry the right to colonize the common heritage of humankind to destroy our greatest ally in climate change.
Oh,
He's so amazing.
statement.
He also announced that he ratified the High Seas Treaty when I was at our ocean. He like had like 5 minutes to talk, and he was like, "We did this. Everyone else should follow suit." Also, I know we're here to talk about the High Seas Treaty, but I just need to tell you guys we have to stop deep sea mining. That's what he did.
True.
We had the video. We posted the video.
Yeah, I remember.
Okay. Let me see if I can find anything else.
All right, yeah. So what's the key takeaway, and what's the key advocacy efforts that we want people to do?
The key takeaway is there's a lot that's going on that's outside of our hands right now. But there are localized approaches we can take, like stopping it in certain waters. We're working in partnership with a coalition that's working to protect an area with additional protections that would prevent deep sea mining from happening in that area. But if the industry starts, if this guy gets elected, if the industry starts as a result of Nauru's contract, we're going to have to take a decentralized approach to it. So we're at this huge crossroads right now as an industry. However, it's going to become, if the industry is allowed to start, it's going to be, every country for himself, every in the U.S. state for themselves. And so we're going to need to then really advocate at the local level and say, hey, we're not going to do this. So for the North America Sustainable Ocean Alliance campaign, we're currently working on making sure all members of Congress know that deep sea mining is not supported by voters. We know a lot of the listeners. Important. Yeah, really important.
Because right now they're like, oh, we're not hearing about it, so they must not care. And it's like, whoa, that ain't true.
You guys, that's what they're saying. That is what they're saying. So I'm going to put in the show notes a way to activate on that toolkit right now. You really have so much power to tell these people they're not going to get elected unless they take a stance on this. And that's our highest priority at the U.S. We can watch from the backseat of what's going on at the ISA, and we can advocate for leaders like Leticia to be in positions of power. We can do those things. We can share the information, and we can share the nuance. But really, in the U.S., I know just most of our listeners are in the U.S., we need to be telling our congressional members no deep sea mining ever.
Easy enough.
Any questions?
Let's get after it.
Cool. Now you know everything. So if you want to start helping, you can go to, I'll put it all right below, the Toolkits from Sustainable Ocean Alliance, the Instagrams, Look Down Action, the Oxygen Project, Sustainable Ocean Alliance, and then FutureSwell. And then share this with a friend who cares about the ocean. If you want to know what the biggest ocean conservation issues of our time are, of our generation, we've got 30 by 30, passing the High Seas Treaty so that we can implement pelagic marine protected areas beyond national jurisdiction so we can reach 50 by 50 and 30 by 30 in the open ocean, deep sea mining, and advocating for the ocean climate nexus within policy.
There it is.
And saving the reef.